Good evening. This is Maestro with the Dawn of War 2 Retribution Elite podcast. Today, we have a 1v1 on Green Tooth Gorge. Our first player will be Ruthless at heart, playing as the Kommando Nob. This is a sneaky orc with bombs, guns, and knives to kill you rather sneakily. His opponent will be DarkHero, playing as the Force Commander. This is a tanky melee hero who can buff and disrupt with Battle Cry. Alright then, so DarkHero, obviously, very, very well-respected player in Elite Mod. In my opinion, and at least in the past few months, the second best player behind Best Noob. Ruthless at heart, though, not someone who I'm as familiar with. I've definitely heard his name a few times here and there, and I'm pretty sure he's no slouch either. So it does look like Ruthless at heart, using that sneaky Kommando Nob. Gonna look over here, could possibly either harass the scouts or get a decap on the power node. Either one, I think, would be good. I actually think the power decap might have been more worthwhile, especially since we do just see an instant retreat on the scouts, which means they won't bleed any models whatsoever. And then we see DarkHero put the node, or rather activate the node to deny the potential possibility of a decap. So I do think that is pretty well played by DarkHero at that time. He really cut his potential losses, but a lot of that we're definitely seeing the advantages of these infiltrating commanders being able to become invisible right out of the gate when there's no way to detect them. And I think a lot of the high value plays in the beginning of the game when you have one of those infiltrating commanders is find a way to basically disrupt your opponent's income or economy in a way that most other commanders would not be able to, because you would actually be able to see them coming. Tactical Marines still have 3 models, but they are getting to the point where they might lose one. Kommando Nob actually going all the way into melee, but I mean at this point it's a 4v1, so I think the Kommando Nob will get focused down, and eventually he will just retreat out of there. Grenades have been upgraded, or rather Sergeant has been upgraded on one of the scout squads, of course giving the grenade ability. So early use on that. Obvious reasons for getting that he does want to be able to detect the Kommando Nob. Also particularly useful on this map, I think, since we do have garrisons that sometimes do come into play, and that just makes it very, very early on that DarkHero will have an answer to any potential garrisons if Ruthless at heart ever had any decision to actually use them. And of course, less important than those 2 reasons is that it will give him the ability to kill units on retreat quite a bit better. And that's actually something that will probably come up a lot more often than the opportunity to use grenades against the garrison. But it's also something that's not quite as necessary to happen. So Kommando Nob, meanwhile, will be infiltrated again. Alright, you will capture the victory point. Storm Boys, though, are out for Ruthless at heart. They will jump in on the Tactical Marines. There are no shotguns on the scouts yet, but a grenade might actually catch those Storm Boys, and indeed they do. That's pretty bad for the Storm Boys. In the end, the Storm Boys, okay, they only lose 1 model, which isn't too bad. If they had lost 2 or even 3, that would have been pretty bad for them, obviously. Storm Boys are really a squad that you really want to prevent as much model loss as possible because of the way they can bleed. And often because, just by the nature of the kind of unit they are as a jump unit, they are often one of the first units into the fray, which means they're often at risk for taking a lot of damage. It's basically that they're a unit that is often put in situations where they could end up tanking damage, but they're also a unit that really can't afford to tank damage. So it's kind of a duality of that unit that especially has kind of given them sometimes of a dubious, or like, maybe not dubious, but almost a two-faced existence where they can sometimes necessary, sometimes very powerful, and at the same time sometimes also very risky. Man, meanwhile, talking about risk, DarkHero putting his scouts out a little too far, taking a little bit too much range damage. Assault Marines will jump in on the Shooter Boys, and there will be an instant retreat on the Shooter Boys. Nice retreat, actually, by Ruthless at heart, managing to hit the retreat button before the Assault Marines actually land, meaning that they won't get knocked down in retreat, which it does make actually quite a difference, because he got both of those Shooter Boys out of there without losing a single model. If they had gotten knocked down before he had retreated them, they would have had to go through the get-up animation, and during that time, there's actually a decent chance that they could lose 1, 2, maybe even 3 models from the Assault Marines. Scouts getting way close over there, end up nading themselves more so than the Slugger boys. DarkHero throwing in the ops. So soon to be a triple cap for DarkHero. DarkHero with pretty standard Space Marine build. Scout, tack Scout into the Assault Marines, and now he also does have his full power farm, and he's managing to convert this into map control pretty well. He does have all 3 victory points. Well, really only has 2. And he's actually going to stop the cap on this one. Probably just a micro mistake, because I'm not sure the Scouts wouldn't really be contribute enough to combat to justify taking them off the victory point in that particular case. Does look like Ruthless at heart will turn it around, though. He will get the double cap very soon. Doesn't look like DarkHero is going to move out soon enough to stop that. Now, I did see the Storm Boys, and I did regard that as somewhat of like I'm almost tempted to say an off-meta choice, mostly because I really think of the Pain Boy these days as being more common in this slot, but he ended up getting the Pain Boy anyway, and the Pain Boy also has some nice synergy with the Storm Boys, but it looks like the Sluggers are the one who really need the heal from the Pain Boy. They get it just in time, but it looks like he's not retreating them out of there, so he'll lose the Sluggers anyway. That's really, really surprising. Meanwhile, the Storm Boys themselves getting really low, given that the Pain Boy heal was used on the Sluggers instead of the Storm Boys. Ideally, I think it would be better off put on the Storm Boys, especially once they jump forward and are put at risk. But the Sluggers, unfortunately, taking way too much damage early on in that engagement. They did eventually get the heal from the Pain Boy, but they weren't retreated in time to make sure that the squad stayed alive. Rather surprising. So upgrades coming in, though. We are going to have the Power Sword on the Force Commander, as well as the Artificer Armor. Power Sword not always commonly seen because of the fact that typically with a Force Commander, I think as with most commanders, the Tier 2 weapon upgrades are generally going to have just better stats than the Tier 1 weapon upgrades. So a lot of times with a Force Commander, you will hold off on getting the Power Sword in favor of getting either the Thunder Hammer or the Power Fist later on. But, I mean, obviously there's still some things that work out with this. I think it works particularly nicely with Assault Marines, which are already pretty common with the Force Commander, since you are getting better damage stacking from Battlecry. Or rather, better damage buffing, I should say. Alright, Kommando Nob will be knocked down. Doesn't look like he achieved too much there, as it's going to be quite a bit harder for Ruthless at heart to really run around with the Kommando Nob with impunity, given that we now have 2 squads of Scouts with Sergeants. One with shotguns, the other still just running around with their bolters. So at this point, I think outside of major engagements, DarkHero probably not going to want to keep both of his Scout squads bunched up, since splitting them would make it a little bit easier for DarkHero to detect the Kommando Nob at times when and basically just make it less likely that Ruthless at heart can find a unit that isn't in the detection radius of a Scout squad and just harass them like that. So Pain Boy's taking cover in the guard tower. Could have thrown a grenade on him, but probably wouldn't have been worth too much, given that the grenade probably wouldn't have killed the Pain Boy. Pain Boy does activate a heal and decides to tie up the Tactical Marines in melee that will deny them capturing this requisition point in their favor. Alright, so some tier 2 units are coming out on the field. Going to be the Death Dread out of Ruthless at heart and the Whirlwind from DarkHero. Whirlwind is an interesting one, but obviously given that we just have a lot of infantry on the side of Ruthless at heart, especially the double shooters, I think particularly it works well against the double shooters because those double shooters are usually going to be bunched up together. But on the other side, perhaps there would be more value using it against the Storm Boys, keeping the Whirlwind at longer range so that it can basically, once the Storm Boys jump in, especially now that they have their Nob and will stun whoever that they land near, just keeping that Whirlwind in the back, making sure that they can actually get the disruption on the Storm Boys, really minimize their impact. Hunter Killer Missile will go out from the Whirlwind, so now Ruthless at heart knows that the Whirlwind is there. He actually moved back the Death Dread. Maybe, I don't know, maybe he was thinking that that was, well, I don't know. Maybe just thinking that there would be more of an answer. But realistically speaking, I think he could have actually stuck around there and bashed the generator farm just a little bit more. Let's also take a look. Okay, Melt-A-Bomb will come out. Is there attack missile launcher as well? There is attack missile launcher. Okay, so there is about as full of a response as DarkHero could have to the Death Dread without buying an entirely new unit in the form of like a Devastator. And at this point, he's already got answers to the Death Dread. I don't think we'll see him go for the Devastator at this time, and that's something that, you know, kind of a balance between higher, lower, or mid-level play. Like, how much do you invest in your answer to a vehicle? Because if you overinvest, sometimes it's too many resources sunk into just countering one unit, and then you could be lacking answers. Like if he had gone for another Devastator to just get a las cannon to just really go overkill on the Death Dread, he wouldn't be able to afford this Razorback that's coming out right now, which is probably going to have more overall value, even if it does mean that there won't be as much threat put on the Death Dread. Okay, that will be a jump on the Tactical Marines. Whirlwind Missile Disruption not coming out just yet. So a lot of damage going on the Tactical Marines, and the Whirlwind Missiles instead going on the Shoot-A-Blob. So Tactical Marines will need to get out of there as the Death Dread starts to approach. But the Death Dread is now more or less uncountered, but it is also low on hit points, so it is going to need some heals soon. I don't know when the Hunter Killer Missile will be coming. And now the Razorback is also something that, you know, arguably, I think it also can help against the Death Dread in a very indirect way, while also being a lot better against other things than just investing in more anti-vehicle. The reason that I do think the the Razorback can actually help against the Death Dread is that that can be a tool for just taxiing around the Tactical Marines, as we see happening. For the Emperor is put on the Tactical Marines. So let's see. Okay, there still needs to be... Actually, I'm not sure with For the Emperor. So now the Razorback is chasing with the Tactical Marines inside. Tactical Marines will get out. They'll get another shot. Does that finish off the Death Dread? No, it doesn't. Need one more shot, but the Razorback is still chasing. So we're actually seeing a very nice use of the synergy between the Razorback and the Tactical Marines. Not too dissimilar to, you know, how you would put Truck Busters, or rather... Tank Busters inside a truck. They're going to get the final missile shot off before the Storm Boys are able to jump in. Okay, now the Razorback is under some amount of threat, taking some rear armor hits from the damage of the Storm Boys, but it will eventually get out of there since Ruthless at heart really does not have a sufficient answer to the Razorback whatsoever. This is a second Razorback? Oh my god. On the one hand, that could be an Overwatch mistake. On the other hand, given that Ruthless at heart doesn't have enough of an answer to vehicles, it wouldn't surprise me if DarkHero could just get another Razorback and actually just pound Ruthless at heart into the ground with it. So finally, we are going to see some Tank Busters, and it turns out that DarkHero did indeed make an Overwatch mistake. Surprising to see that from a player of his caliber, but luckily for him, he does cancel it before the second Razorback actually does come out, and he will instead be saving up those resources, probably just saving up for Tier 3 at this point. He's already got, you know, 6 units out on the field, plus his commander, so I don't think it's really necessary for him to stay in Tier 2, especially with a full power farm. Yeah, I think going to Tier 3 is just the right choice. Ruthless at heart probably thinking the same thing, but he is in a little bit of a weaker position because he is struggling with requisition income. Doesn't have as much requisition income as DarkHero, probably also bleeding more. Meanwhile, that will be the Storm Boys jumping in on the Tactical Marines in just an instant retreat from them to mitigate any damage. Rather, cut his losses. He doesn't take a single loss on the Tactical Marines. Ooh, meanwhile, we've got some hidden Tank Busters. Those hidden Busters, I think, are about to reach one of their targets. Juicy rear armor shot potential. They get revealed, though, but they do finish off the Razorback. A lot of disruption going on them. I wonder if DarkHero is going to see if he can even get the squad wipe on them. I don't think he's actually in a good position to throw a grenade, so he won't have that opportunity. I think it would have been possible if he had moved the scouts up a little bit more aggressively, but he didn't end up going for it. Kommando Nob pretty low. Pain Boy's actually in a huge amount of trouble, and he's probably going to go down at this point. And he indeed does. That's a big loss for Ruthless at heart, and also, in my opinion, a very unnecessary one. Really surprised to see that happen. And we now have the double Busters out of Ruthless at heart. So this is also something where I honestly wonder if it is an overcommitment to anti-vehicle when the only vehicle left out on the field is a Whirlwind, because that's 2 of your squads that are not particularly useful against other infantry, and whose only job really is to take out the Whirlwind. I guess alternatively, you know, just some alternative jobs. They can just do some capping around the map. They can bash generators, but it turns out the entire farm for DarkHero has already been bashed at this time. So things now starting to look quite a bit weaker for DarkHero. I think DarkHero just naded one of his own Assault Marines. Meanwhile, Double Tank Bust is still looking for that Razorback. Just kidding, I meant the Whirlwind. Still looking for it, actually. Just trying to see if they can even move, even going into range of the turrets, to see if they can just get one barrage off. Or one volley, because not the Tank Buster barrage ability that I'm talking about. Oh no, Scouts, though, getting in so much trouble. This is why Scouts really can't afford to just tank the damage of double Shooter Boys. They just absolutely can't. The damage of the Shooter Boys is just far too overwhelming. Stun Bomb does connect on the Tactical Marines. Only the missile launcher model is not affected, but it doesn't really matter, because as a squad, they were getting stunned. But there wasn't much focus fire put on the Tactical Marines with the Shooter Boys because of the advancing threat of the Assault Marines on it. So that's nevertheless a 1 engagement for DarkHero. Alright, meanwhile, the Assault Marines will go over to capture the victory point. I don't know, I almost wonder that this will be the Tactical Marines getting out of there and DarkHero is not able to finish the cap in the middle. I was wondering if it was worth it to keep the Assault Marines out there to try to jump on the Shooter Boys because they weren't forced off the field. Force Commander's actually still here, though. Battlecry is not active. I think he just activated Battlecry and then... No, he didn't. But he did activate Retreat. Meanwhile, Assault Marines are not going to finish this either. They will manage to get the time to jump out even after being stunned. So Ruthless at heart is now actually being pretty oppressive. You could even say he's being ruthless, so much so to the point where I think he gets a lot more. I think he gets more generators out of DarkHero, unless this Whirlwind has anything to say about it. The Whirlwind, my God, the Scout's just taken so much damage. So lucky to not lose a single model there. So lucky, not so lucky in the end. They do finally lose a model. And what is this going to be? This is going to be Terminators. They're going to be ranged Terminators. Okay, I was wondering whether it would be ranged Terminators or Assault Terminators. DarkHero, playing as the Force Commander, of course does have that ranged Terminator option, but he's also the only one, the only Space Marine Commander, who can get the Assault Terminators. Now, all things considered, I do actually think the ranged Terminators are better in this case, but I was mostly just expecting Assault Terminators simply because it is the Force Commander. But I think it's better than the Assault Terminators because I think the Shooter Boys can kind of kite the Assault Terminators. Even if the Shooter Boys can't actually do much damage to the Assault Terminators, they can also make sure that they don't take much damage to the Assault Terminators. Ranged Terminators, on the other hand, can shoot at Shooter Boys with effective impunity, bleeding them very, very easily while taking insignificant damage in return. So I actually really think the ranged Terminators are the best choice here. I think it's by quite some margin the best unit choice that DarkHero could have made, since, you know, the double tank busters are up. That means getting any kind of vehicle for DarkHero, he would have to be very, very careful. Shooter Boys, sorry, Tank Busters nearly wiped. He would have to be extremely careful with any vehicle. And even though the Tank Busters, rather the Terminators do actually take damage from the Tank Busters, they're at least built in a way that they can tank the Tank Buster damage better than a tank would. That was a confusing sentence. I kind of did it on purpose. But basically better than a vehicle would, since they have a much larger health pool than an actual vehicle. Okay, Kommando Nob is not detected, so that will be a stun bomb going out. But the Terminators don't take the bait, so that's a completely whiffed stun bomb. Rather unfortunate for Ruthless at heart. Where is this Kommando Nob going? Okay, that's a jump on the entire blob, resulting in a full retreat from Ruthless at heart. That's pretty rough. So speaking of tanks, it will be a tank out of Ruthless at heart. Looted tank on the way. But it is a double cap for DarkHero. He obviously is quite behind in victory points, but pretty much ever since the Terminators have been out on the field, he's really just had a compositional advantage. I'm not even 100% sure Okay, I was going to say I'm not even 100% sure if the looted tank changes that, but I think it does. The looted tank definitely brings a lot of firepower to bear on the most of the infantry of DarkHero. He can also finally just chase down and get rid of the Whirlwind once and for all. Doesn't, of course, still need to be careful. There's still a missile launch attack squad. There's still a Melta bomb assault marine squad. By itself, for a player of Ruthless at Heart's caliber, I don't think those should be enough to actually finish off the looted tank, unless he does go pretty aggro trying to finish down the Whirlwind. And now we also see a Terminator Force Commander. So this does improve things a little bit for DarkHero in terms of dealing with the looted tank. Although the Terminator Force Commander isn't the most reliable AV, he can still teleport in after it, put some threat on it, force it to move back, and it's just another source of AV that he has, the Power Fist, on that Terminator Force Commander. And of course, the Terminator Squad has Power Fist as well and can do quite a bit of damage to the looted tank, but it's a lot riskier to put in the Terminator Squad against the looted tank than the Terminator Force Commander, who can ultimately just retreat out. He can actually use the teleport a lot more aggressively than the Terminator Squad, because he does have the luxury of being able to retreat. And They Shall Know No Fear has been activated by the Assault Marines. I'm actually wondering if they could take this fight against the Storm Boys, but they choose not to. Meanwhile, Terminators are in a huge amount of trouble. They need to get out of here. Like, I'm not sure where they're going. They're going to go in aggressively. He wants to finish off the looted tank. This is potentially a big risk, but let's see if he can. He needs to get the looted tank for this to even be worth it. Otherwise, he probably loses the Terminators. There's the stun coming in from the Storm Boys. The looted tank is able to get out of there alive. Meanwhile, Terminators are in a huge amount of trouble. Merciless Strike will be committed from the Assault Marines to try to save the Terminators, but they lose. Okay, they only lost one model, which is still kind of a big deal. That one model is incredibly expensive. But that was such a risky play from DarkHero, aggressively teleporting in the Terminators, as I had just spent some time actually talking about that. The fact that the Terminators, they can't retreat, and if you teleport them in aggressively, they are very, very committed. They do not have their own way out, which is why we saw the Assault Marines coming in to save them. And wow, in the end there, the looted tank is killed. I missed it somehow, and that's Ruthless at Heart calling the GG. Apparently what happened was that he maybe did not mean to get the second squad of tank busters, which now makes a lot of sense. It was really surprising that he did go the double tank busters, and I think that was something that, it didn't really help him enough for the rest of the game. So that will be the end of this game. DarkHero taking it in the end. I do hope you enjoyed it, and have a good night.